The religious insist that God doesn't owe you anything. You just have to kiss his ass because, well, bald rationalizations mostly. Bald rationalizations and childish fear. That's all religion is, after all, and we're going to take a look at some more of that today because, really, what else can we do? Expect someone with a brain? Yeah, not among the religious. Certainly not. We're going to do a video from a channel called Jesus Focused, and sadly it's not remotely focused on reality because then maybe it wouldn't be getting trashed so badly. Not that the religious tend to care because they're all only in it for the feels, but it's just got to be pointed out how badly it's actually doing. They'll never listen, and we probably shouldn't expect them to, but that's why religion is going the way of the dodo. So let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side.
Why should I believe in God? He hasn't done anything for me.
Now, right off the bat, and I think that anyone who has ever seen the religious playbook in action, you'll already know what's coming, but the religious simply start with the preconceived notion that their gods are real, their gods, not any others, just theirs, because they can't even conceive of the notion that they're not right up front. So every video that you see, especially the ones ostensibly addressing atheists, which this one really has to, they're starting from the position that no atheist starts from because they don't actually care about atheists. They don't understand atheism at all. They're just really trying to stroke the egos of the already religious because if they understood atheism at all, which clearly they don't, then they wouldn't do what they do, would they? They'd actually be able to present evidence to support their side. This video claims to be able to do that, which I think we all know they can't, but hey, I'm willing to give them a shot if you are. So let's go back and see.
If he's real, let him show me. How many times have you heard or even thought this yourself?
Plenty, because that's what rational people do. Now, I don't expect a real God to show up on my doorstep with evidence or anything. I mean, that would certainly be nice, but I don't really expect that. If that was going to happen, I figure it would have already happened by now. It's entirely on the shoulders of those who believe this stuff to back it up to my satisfaction, or at least if they expect me to believe it too, then that's really what they need to do. And we already know they're not even trying to do that. So I honestly don't expect much here, but at least if and when they pretend to present evidence, I can show why it's not really evidence. There's always a point in every theist presentation where they take a massive unwarranted leap to, therefore God. Yeah, let's see how long it takes him to get there because I'm sure he will. Place your bets down in the comments and we'll see who's right.
Today we're diving into the dangerous mindset of expecting God to prove himself to us. Spoiler alert, God doesn't owe us anything, and he's already left more proof of his existence than we could ever imagine.
Bet you're wrong. But no, I wouldn't say God owes anyone anything because there's no reason whatsoever to think that any gods exist at all. You don't just get to assert it, you don't just get to assume it, you have to be able to prove it, and let's be honest, he's not going to be able to. He's not even going to give it a good faith effort. This is going to be a half-assed attempt at coddling the fifis of the believers because atheists will simply not be impressed. Oh, but you're biased. No, I'm not. That's you. Because the religious are willing to go through absurd leaps of illogic to get to their imaginary friends. They just really want it to be true, but that doesn't make it true. You need to have evidence every step of the way, and as we unfortunately know, they take 2 steps and then leap to, see, I told you God was real. But that's not how it works. So, with the obvious fail incoming. Let's see where he goes. I'd love to be proven wrong for once, but it never seems to happen, does it?
Let's get real. This mindset comes from a place of pride.
No, that's you. The projection is strong in this one. The religious really love to think that they're the bestest buddies with this all-powerful creator of everything. I mean, no evidence provided or anything, but that's really all it is. It's ego. It's also a lot of fear. The religious are some of the most terrified people around because they are scared of literally everything. They invent this magical man in the sky to allay their fears, and then they're terrified of that imaginary God. That's kind of messed up, isn't it? These people have serious emotional problems. Let's not kid ourselves.
It's the ego that says, God, you're on trial here. Convince me you're worth believing in.
I mean, couldn't we be saying that for everything? That's basic rationality. But the religious are terrified of that, aren't they? They don't want to be rational. They're scared of being rational. They're scared of being skeptical. It gets in the way of their emotional high and their bald rationalizations, because they really want the world to be a particular way. They have no reason to think that it is that way. Much to the contrary, it certainly isn't that way, but they really like the idea, don't they? As I keep saying, they are just immature children that refuse to grow up, living in adult bodies. You have no choice in the world that you're actually in. It is what it is, whether you like it or not, but they figure that if they just close their eyes and wish hard enough, suddenly they'll be in control. Of course, that scares them too, so no, it's not them. It's something that they've just made up as a stand-in. That's what's really going on here. And it's sad that they can't figure it out, because the rest of us certainly can.
But the Bible tells us the truth. Who are you, a human being, to talk back to God, as stated in Romans chapter 9, verse 20?
My book says a thing. Why do they think that that means anything at all to atheists? Oh, right, they're not talking to us, are they? This is the problem. They're really emotionally attached to their religious fantasies, and because they're not intelligent enough to just let that go and just embrace objective reality, they have to assume that everybody else is just like they are. And no, they're just wrong. We are nothing like you. We're better. We're smarter. We're more rational. Figure it out.
Imagine standing before the creator of the universe and demanding that he entertain us with miracles as if he's some performer on stage.
I'm not going to just imagine things for which there is no objective evidence. I have no reason whatsoever to think that any God is even a remote possibility. Imagine you're standing before invisible, intangible universe creating pixies. Yeah, that's stupid. So no, let's not imagine that until you can actually provide evidence that it's factually true, or that it's even factually possible. I'm willing to go with that. You can't just start from your emotionally comforting fantasies. You have to begin with objective reality and provide evidence for anything else. Give it a shot. I know you won't because you don't care, but that's why people laugh at you. And while I'm here, this video, at the time that I'm writing this at least, it has had 4 upvotes and 48 downvotes. So you can see how well this is going over, right?
That's the ego speaking loud and clear. Let's pause and look at the world around us. God's fingerprints are everywhere.
That's, pretty close to, look at the trees, right? How do you know that? Not what do you believe, because nobody cares what you believe, but how do you objectively discover God's supposed fingerprints? Because you can't. You can't prove God is real at all. Or at least he hasn't done so yet. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But until he can do that, nobody is going to be impressed with any of this stuff at all. Because a Hindu could just replace God with Brahma. Look at Brahma's fingerprints. Sorry, not impressed. Same with any other god out there. Same with anything out there. Come back when you have evidence, not just faith. But then we'd never hear from them again, and somehow I don't really think that's a bad thing, do you?
From the vastness of the stars in the night sky to the intricate design of a single flower.
None of which proves God done it. You're starting from something you cannot demonstrate is real, just because you really like the idea. That doesn't make it real. But this is as far as he'll go, right? I'm right because I really want to be right, so there. But that doesn't mean you're right, because the aforementioned Hindu, they could do exactly the same thing and say that they're right too. In fact, every single religion that has ever existed could say, look at the trees, that proves my God is real. No, it doesn't. That proves absolutely nothing. It proves nothing remotely of the sort. You're just making yourself look dumb. It just proves you're an idiot for believing any of this unsupported slop. The only way to prove that God done it is to prove that God is real first. Then you can provide evidence that this real God that you've already established actually did anything. And they're not even trying to do that. We can't just let them go for a jog with the goalpost strapped to their back, because that's simply not how any of this works.
Creation screams of God's existence.
It does nothing remotely of the sort, since you haven't established that there was a creation to begin with. This is argument by assertion, nothing more. Of course, I don't think we can be surprised by this, because what else can the religious really do? This is the top of their game, as pathetic as it is. We are seeing that absurd leap of irrationality from look at the trees to God done it, with nothing corroboratory in the middle at all. It doesn't matter how often you explain this to the religiously deluded, though, because they'll never be able to get it. God is just that made-up word that they've come up with to explain anything they don't personally understand, or do not personally like. God represents ignorance. No surprise there.
The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands, as stated in Psalm chapter 19, verse 1.
We still don't care about your stupid book. You'd think, after getting their asses handed to them time and time and time again, that they'd start to think about their own abject failures, but they don't. So, out of curiosity, I went through a couple of his videos, and pretty much nobody watches them. He gets very few views at all and virtually no upvotes because, as I pointed out before, the actual watch ratios for most theist channels are just crap. People subscribe out of a bizarre compulsion to click buttons on other religious channels, but they have no interest in actually consuming the content. They don't support him. They don't care what he has to say. They just feel good clicking on that subscribe button, and then they ignore this guy completely. This is really, really common in religious circles. I don't really understand it, and if anybody thinks they do, please explain down in the comments, because, at least as far as I'm concerned, that's really, really dumb.
Think about the human body, the way your heart beats without you thinking, the way a baby is formed in the womb.
All done completely naturally, without the demonstrable interference of any god. Just because you really like the idea, that doesn't make it true. My heart beats the way that it does because that's how humans evolved. No gods required. We have naturalistic explanations for all of it, which the religious have to reject out of hand because they're more interested in how they feel than they do about reality at all. That's pathetic, and you can say, well, this is a small channel, he's doing the best that he can. But you can look at the really huge apologetic channels, and they're all doing the exact same thing. This is why I'm not afraid to look at nobodies, because they are just as representative of religious insanity as the big boys are. Mike Winger has 823,000 subscribers, and we know what an idiot he is. Now, is what this guy says any dumber than Mike Winger? It's a dumb off, and that's not exactly a good thing.
And the complexity of DNA. These are no accidents. These are intentional works of a loving creator.
That's your claim. Now, back it up. Of course, we know he won't be able to, and he won't even try because he doesn't care. So what other topic would we ever let people get away with this crap in and not ask any questions? And the answer, of course, is none. So why would we take religion seriously if we're not going to let anybody else get away with it? People need to stop doing this. One standard is all we need. Apply that one standard to absolutely everything and you'll be fine. Anyone who can't or won't do that, they're an idiot. There's a lot of idiots out there, aren't there? And that's kind of sad.
Yet for many, that's not enough. They want something more, something spectacular, something undeniable.
Something evidentially supported, because that is the problem that the religious have. Because they are starting with the preconception of a God, something just made up for faith and fee-fees, and then they use that God as a get-out-of-reality free card. I don't want to get out of reality. I want to understand reality. If there is a God, I want to know it. And the only way to know anything is through evidence. No evidence, no knowledge. But since the religious aren't looking for knowledge in the first place, they're after emotional comfort, they don't care about evidence at all. They just look around, see stuff they don't understand, and go, God done it. But that's not how any of this works. God is worth believing in if, and only if, you can actually prove that God exists and not one instant before. Faith doesn't get you anywhere, and the religious can't get that through their heads. That's why they're not speaking the same language as rational people, because they are not rational people. Saying God done it doesn't mean God done it. It means that you're deluded out of your gourd, and that's not something to be proud of.
But here's the truth. No amount of evidence will convince a hardened heart that refuses to see.
And that's one of the biggest problems with the religious. Seriously, how many times have you seen this in your own interactions with the religious? Because I see it all the time. I have lots of evidence, but you won't believe me, so I'm not going to bother to present any. This is just a bald rationalization. It's an excuse. It's a lie that the religious make up because they know on some level that they've got absolutely nothing. They are terrified to find that their supposed evidence is just laughable, which, whenever someone mistakenly trots it out there, it absolutely is. But it sounds good to me. So what? Because as we've seen time and time again around here, just because you really like the idea, that doesn't make the idea true. You need to provide specific evidence that points directly to your claimed entity, and you aren't doing that. You're not even close. They get so far and then just leap to God done it without demonstrating that God exists at all. Not that they care, because really, why would they? I had a conversation recently with someone who said that a religious friend had challenged him to debunk his faith. Then I spelled out all the places this was going to go wrong, and he came back and he said, yep, that's exactly what happened. The second that you challenge their faith, or worse, suggest that their faith is wholly irrational, the conversation is over. They don't want to hear it. That's why you can't let them pull the standard blah, 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 ridiculous faith-based nonsense, therefore God. You've got to prove it in a way that I can objectively examine for myself, that I can look at your evidence and see if it actually stands up to critical evaluation. And sadly, for the religiously gullible, they've got nothing of any substance to present. Big surprise there.
The ultimate proof of God's love and existence isn't in the miracles we demand. It's in the miracle he already performed.
that you can't even prove happened. The more that we look at this, the less likely it looks to have ever happened at all. Of course, for the religious, they don't care, do they? They're running on pure fifis and faith, but that doesn't make any of it real. It doesn't matter what you really want to be true, only what you can demonstrate actually is, and the second that you bring faith into the picture, you've lost. Faith is embarrassing. It really is. But the religious, they're not running on reality. They don't care what's true in the real world. They are only after emotional comfort, and that is entirely irrelevant. They couldn't care less because, fifis. But that's why they're so laughably absurd. That's why it's so entertaining to watch two theists of different religions going after each other, because they're both doing exactly the same thing and coming to entirely different conclusions, and then demanding that their blind faith is far superior to the other guy's blind faith, while everyone around them is just laughing their asses off. My imaginary friend is better than your imaginary friend. Seriously, shut the fuck up. Because this just happened a couple days ago over on my BitChute channel, where one of my videos, I had one anti-Semite show up, and then another one who had a slightly different view. They started screaming at each other. These are two Jew haters who were screaming at each other because they didn't hate Jews in the same way. This kind of shit is really, really common. You people need to knock it off. You're just making yourself look like a fool, but that's all these people are, right?
God came down as a man in Jesus Christ. He walked this earth, healed the sick, raised the dead, and taught the truth of salvation.
That's your story. That doesn't make it true. That's why you need to provide evidence that any of it ever happened at all, and you can't do that. Sure, you'll just repeat the same emotionally comforting lies that you've had preached to you from the pulpit, but you can't dare dig deeper because it all falls apart under the slightest whiff of rational scrutiny. They have to come at it with all of the preconceptions that they've been brainwashed with from birth, or it all just disintegrates, and because they don't like it, after all, being wrong would make them sad, they simply can't accept that any of it could possibly be untrue because they're desperate for the comfort that it brings. That doesn't make any of it true, though, and that's why we ask the questions that we do, why we watch the words that come out of their mouths, because that betrays their absolute irrationality very clearly. You don't win debates with assertions. You need actual facts, and the religious don't have any, do they?
And when humanity rejected him, he willingly went to the cross to die for our sins.
Not so much. I mean, there's no evidence that any of it ever happened at all, but in the Bible, Jesus wasn't so much willing as he really had no choice in the matter, did he? He was arrested. He didn't go and turn himself in. He could have admitted all the charges before Pilate, which he didn't. He remained silent and asked cryptic questions to keep from being honest. When Pilate asked who he is, he could have said so clearly. Did he? No. He couldn't even carry his own cross to Golgotha. He needed help there too. Then, when he was nailed up on a stick, he whined about it. My God, why have you forsaken me? That's not something a willing volunteer does. So these people are not reading the same book that I am. In fact, I doubt they've ever read the Bible at all. This is just theistic story time. And that's just pathetic.
But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us, as stated in Romans chapter 5, verse 8.
But that's another thing, isn't it? God is responsible for the sins of humanity. It's not our fault, it's his. He created us this way, knowing full well what would happen if he did, and he did it anyhow. That's something you'll never get a Christian to admit to. They can't blame their imaginary father figure in the sky for any of his clear and demonstrable failures. Because if God wasn't such an asshole in the first place, there would be no reason to kill off Jesus. God could just say, Okay, I guess I fucked up and all is forgiven. And then just move on. But that's not how this ridiculous nonsense works, is it? I am a better person than this God is. And so are you. So is everyone. God was completely incompetent or grossly evil. Take your pick. And you're bowing down to this moral monster? What the fuck is wrong with you?
What more do we need? What more could we ask for than a God who sacrificed himself for the very people who doubted him?
A, fundamentally better class of God? Because holy shit, God could hardly have been worse. This supposed all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God knew that Eve was going to eat the apple and planted the tree in the garden to begin with. What are you, mental? So this is all set up from the start. He wanted man to be damned. There is no other explanation possible. Well, not unless you want to admit that your God rode the short bus. He's special, all right, but I don't think that's what you meant. Your God is an evil bastard who fucked humanity over for shits and giggles, and you're kissing this idiot's ass. I ask again, what the hell is wrong with you? Try to come up with a decent answer.
Yet even then some said, if you're really the Son of God, come down from the cross, as stated in Matthew chapter 27, verse 40.
Which should have been simple, but then again, Jesus is up there whining, right? He was about to have a bad weekend for your sins. Yeah, cry me a fucking river. Because that's really the point, isn't it? He couldn't come down if he wanted to. Other than doing some ridiculous card tricks, Jesus really wasn't that hot. He didn't have that many of his magical powers while he was on Earth. So they were right. Jesus was pointless, assuming that Jesus ever existed at all. Because that's really the thing. There is no evidence for Jesus. Every single theist that ever claims that Jesus is real, I challenge them to produce their evidence that backs any of it up, and all they can do is make excuses. Because there is none. I had one guy point to a 15-year-old video on YouTube that had both comments and ratings turned off. Yeah, that's not at all impressive. Do better.
Their hearts were blind to the greatest miracle happening right before their eyes.
Another empty claim. That's about all they've got, isn't it? They love to think that they have evidence, but when it comes right down to it, they've got absolutely nothing but claims. That's why this video is so ridiculous and why it's been so completely downvoted into oblivion. Because they've got nothing but their own irrationality. They don't care what's true. They just don't. That's why they have the absurd double standard for their religion that they don't have for anything else in their lives. Whereas I have the exact same standard for everything. No evidence equals no belief. That's how it should be for everyone. The second that you start introducing different standards based on your feelings and desires, you've betrayed your own irrationality. Tons of people do it, religious and otherwise, and it just makes them look like idiots. So, what do you think so far? Let me know down in the comments. I'm not really impressed, not that I really thought I would be. There is the shocking lack of anything remotely resembling objective evidence, and a whole lot of my book says a thing, almost like he doesn't know what the non-religious are looking for, right? Of course, he doesn't because he doesn't care. The video is only being made for the already faithful because those are the people who might potentially benefit him. Unfortunately for him, he's completely getting his ass handed to him. Not that he actually cares because, fee-fees. So we'll be back next week to finish it out, and who knows, I guess it could get better. I wouldn't be holding my breath or anything, but who really knows at this point, right?